Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the Health Fair. My name is Dr. Michael Shapiro. I'm the Director of Behavioral Medicine here at Southern Regional AHEC.
And I'm Dr. Mary Shapiro, and I direct the ADHD Diagnostic Clinic at AHEC.
And we're really honored to be speaking with you today at the Health Fair, even though it's virtually, obviously. So what we're going to be talking about today is teen stress and depression in the pandemic era. And my goodness, I wish I could tell you this is the first time we've had this talk, but this is a topic we've been asked to talk about an awful lot over the past year, unfortunately. And here's what we hope to accomplish today during our brief presentation. First, we're going to talk about teen socialization during the pandemic. Is there even such a thing? Everything has changed so much. Then we're going to talk about your kids' emotions. This has been an emotional time for kids and parents. What do you do when things really get off the rails and really get unraveled? So we'll talk about that. And then we'll give you some hints for virtual school for those of you who are still dealing with that in some form or another. So let's start out with the big issue right now, teen socialization during the pandemic. How are your kids doing socially? Now, I'm sure if we were with you live right now and I asked you that question, how have your teens handled the past year, we'd hear a torrent of stories. And they wouldn't all be good, would they? Mostly bad stories about kids losing relationships with other kids and therefore jeopardizing the relationship with their friends and their own parents and their own siblings sometimes. Most but not all kids, teens, have trouble being alone and isolated. Now, some teens, like kids on the autism spectrum, they actually do well when they're alone. They prefer it that way. But the problem is the pandemic has discouraged all kids from even trying to be social. We've told them to restrict their contact with others. And that's an important thing. You know, all teens are trying, part of the progress of going through adolescence is that you're trying to develop some independence from your family. And socialization with other teens is such an important part of that process. So in that respect, this pandemic has hit teens during a very important stage of development. Speaking of development, I'd like to show you a picture of a brain. If you look here, the big blue part of the brain, that's called the frontal lobe of the brain. And it is the biggest part of the human brain. It's really the biggest part of the brain that helps us be human. It's responsible for a lot of things. Your frontal lobe helps you organize your behavior and sequence your behavior and plan. It also serves the important function of self-control. In the frontal lobe are neurons, nerve cells that help people inhibit their behavior and have impulse control. Now, the interesting thing is that's the last part of the brain to develop in everybody, and it doesn't usually mature completely until the end of the teens, early 20s. Which kind of explains some things, doesn't it, about teen behavior? For instance, why do teens have such a hard time delaying gratification, controlling their impulses, understanding the consequences of their actions sometimes? That's because of this frontal lobe development. And that's the case even in the best of times without a global pandemic. These are functions teens are struggling to establish. So here's some suggestions. Let's get right to how to help your teen.
I just want to talk about some practicals about what you might be able to do to help your teen through these difficult times. The first is you need to be prepared to educate them about what's going on. You know, they're hearing a lot of stuff on TV, in the media, on social media. And they may have a lot of questions. And as an adult, you need to be prepared to answer those questions and to encourage them to ask those questions. You know, you need to be prepared to educate them about what's going on with the pandemic and also what's going on with social inequities and social justice during this time. Encourage them to ask questions and guide them to reliable sources like the CDC for pandemic information or reliable news sources. You know, correct any misinformation they may have come across, especially on social media. You know, secondly, we need to encourage our teens to talk about how they're feeling. And you may need to ask some specific questions. Are you feeling discouraged? Are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling angry that your senior year didn't go the way you wanted it to go? You may want to ask some specific questions to kind of draw out their feelings and encourage them to talk about what they're dealing with right now emotionally. Um, the next thing is that we do need to let our teens use social media to connect with friends and family right now. In some situations that may be their only outlet for connecting with other people, but we still need to supervise the use of social media. Our kids can get in a lot of trouble on social media if we don't set up some practical limits for them with social media. For instance, there needs to be a time at night that they cut off their phones and their laptops, their computers. Nothing good happens on social media after 10 p.m. So we need to be proactive in protecting our teens, but allowing them to use those resources to interact with other people. We need to talk with our teens about what are risky behaviors during this time. For instance, things like smoking or vaping during a pandemic when that has respiratory effects. We need to talk to our teens about how this may make them at higher risk. About ignoring COVID restrictions. Some of our young people think, oh, this is not a serious virus, we're not going to get this. And especially recently, we're hearing of younger and younger people who are becoming seriously ill with some of the variants. So our teens need to know about this. So watch for risky behaviors in your teens. The next thing we need to do is we need to increase enjoyable family times to reduce isolation. Have game nights with your teens. Start some kind of family project together. The weather's nicer now. This is a great time to build an outdoor space for people to gather or to plant a vegetable garden, and try to include them in those family times. Whenever possible, you might arrange some safe social distancing time with their peers. They may be able to take a walk or take a hike with some of their friends, or to go to the lake, or to play sports where you can do some social distancing. Just make sure that they know what the safe limits are for that. And the last one is look into volunteer opportunities for your teens. Our adolescents love to be useful to other people. And there may be ways that they can help other people during this time that they haven't thought of. For instance, calling or texting someone, an older adult who is isolated and quarantined by themselves. They may be able to help tutor some younger children who are doing remote learning. They may be able to clean their closet out and give things to charity or do something for the community. So look for ways that they might be helpful.
So let's say you're doing all these things and things are still not going well or going smoothly. When do you get really concerned about how your teen is reacting during that time? I wish I could give you a simple answer to that, but the fact is, nothing is normal right now. This has never been done before. We've never had to deal. Those of us who are, in this generation or immediately surrounding our generation, we've never had to deal with anything like this. So in some ways, this is the Wild West. Nothing's normal right now. Don't expect your kids to act like they're normal right now. However, we do know that we've got to keep our kids active. And if they don't want to be, this could be a sign, when teens have depression, they become sometimes vegetative. Vegetative symptoms are like what we call anergia, which is when you don't have energy to do anything, or anhedonia, which is when you don't have joy in doing things that you used to enjoy. So if kids are showing resistance to being active, or they're not having fun doing things that they used to do, this might be a vegetative sign or a red flag about something worse. If you're over your pay grade and you don't know if what your kid is going through or what behaviors they're exhibiting, is this normal or not during this time? Is it something to worry about? Seek help. When in doubt, seek help. The only thing that's going to hurt is your checkbook, maybe, if you go find a mental health professional to ask advice. Is this normal for my teen or not? we also need to talk about suicidal references. Um, you know, we're tempted to think when a teen says something that threatens self-harm, I'm just going to kill myself. I'm just going to go get run over by a truck, that it's being manipulative or that it's just a offhand, casual statement that they said in anger. That very well may be, but you can't ignore a suicidal reference of any type. Um, they're not always merely manipulative or a sign of discontent. That having been said, let's talk about some other red flags. As we know, teen years are difficult and turbulent years, even at the best of times. If that period of their lives includes mental health or behavioral challenges like depression, things can get really severe in a pretty short amount of time. So warning signs that things are getting serious include things like a drop in grades, um, or an uncharacteristic loss of interest in school. Now, it's been our experience that kids are really missing school right now. But if they've lost interest in school, the social or the academic aspect of it, or they're having difficulty getting motivated to attend school if it's virtual. Isolation from peers and family, where they're becoming more withdrawn. Teens, as we just said, are in a very social time of their lives when peer relationships are very important. And if they're avoiding contact with other teens, something could be wrong. Or if they stop, as I said, being interested in participating in things that they used to enjoy. So anytime an adolescent, as I said, is having suicidal thoughts or is showing any of these red flags, we want to look for help pretty quickly. Even for those of us who've been, Mary and I have been psychologists, child psychologists for 40 years now. And even sometimes we can't tell, is a suicidal remark really serious or not? We have to always take it seriously, take these red flags seriously, and look for help. You do need to know that there are several different types of suicidal thoughts, and they kind of vary in severity. And it's good to know this, what we call hierarchy of suicidal behaviors. The most severe of suicidal ideation, as we call it, is active attempts or plans. It's when a kid comes up with a plan how they're going to do this. If you see them start giving away things, start, keeping writing letters to people, goodbye letters and things like that. That's pretty serious. The next most severe is suicidal statements. Like I said before, I'm going to kill myself. I'm just going to do myself in. More often, there's what we call, if you look at the next one down, passive suicidal ideation, which is more general thoughts like, I just don't want to be here anymore. Or if this is the way the rest of my life is going to be, I don't want to do it anymore. Or I wish I was never born. Or I wish I wasn't part of this family. Then, of course, there's engaging in potentially life-threatening behaviors like, cutting. It's what all the cool kids seem to be doing right now. But then there are other things as well, like driving too fast or leaving home without telling anybody. These are potentially life-threatening, and should always be taken seriously. Now, we always say that the best predictor of the possibility of someone engaging in suicidal behavior is a history of past suicidal behavior. So in other words, if someone has made an attempt before or has made these kind of statements before, it makes it more serious when they do so again in the future. But as we've said, it doesn't matter. If you see any of these four different levels in the hierarchy of suicidal behaviors, please seek help immediately. Lastly, we're going to spend a few minutes trying to help those parents who are still engaged in distance learning with their kids. And this has, of course, been a challenge like no other, because much as you love your teens, you didn't expect to be trapped in the same house with them 24/7 for a full year.
So we're just, again, going to try to give you some hints of things that might be helpful with distance learning. The first is understand your role. You are the parent, you are not the teacher of your child, even though you've kind of been thrown into that role in the last year. But parents should be playing a support role during this time. Encourage your children to stay engaged with their online instruction and to think critically and to explore other options for learning. Remind your child that they're not on vacation. This is not summer break right now if they're doing distance learning. And try to make a regular schedule for schoolwork. But again, remember what your role is. We've been concerned, we've talked with a lot of parents during this past year, and one of our concerns is that when the virtual learning is over, we want parents and kids still to have a great relationship with each other. So if you find that you're fighting all the time about virtual instruction, it may be time to email some of the teachers and get them more involved, and you go back into your role as a parent for your child. The next thing is you need to make a definite space for learning. Children are going to do best if they're working in a place that is quiet and comfortable for them. And it needs to be a space that's different from where they watch television or where they play video games. It needs to be a space that's devoted to schoolwork. Use the same space every day, try to get rid of distractions. Even if it's a small space, if it's dedicated to schoolwork, the kids will do better with it. The next thing is you need to set clear expectations, especially if you are also working from home, which a lot of parents are doing while their kids are doing virtual schooling. You may want to help them set up a daily schedule where they know what kind of activities they need to do independently, the ones that that are easy for them, and come to you to get help with the ones that they have more difficulty with. You may want to think about setting up office hours. For instance, with a high schooler, you might be able to say from 11 to 12, I can review what you did in the morning, and you can come to me with any questions or problems you might have, and I'll take a break from my work while we're doing that. Of course, younger children and our students that have more learning challenges are going to need more direct help, and you'll have to figure out how to schedule your time to allow that for them. Whenever you're stumped with virtual learning, encourage reading. Reading is the single best thing your child can do to advance their learning at any stage, whether we're talking about kindergarten, first grade, or we're talking about high school level. So if you get to the end of your rope with virtual learning, encourage your children to read. For younger children, it may be even audiobooks, or something like that, but encourage them to read whenever possible. You need to plan your work and work your plan for virtual learning. That means that there needs to be a daily schedule for your child. For older kids, it can be a written schedule. Maybe this is what we're going to do first. And teachers are providing a lot of these for our kids right now. For younger children, it may be a picture schedule. This is what you do first. This is what you do secondly. For our middle school and high school kids, it may be a weekly schedule. This is what we need to accomplish by Friday. And help them prioritize and set goals and deadlines for themselves, and then celebrate and give rewards when they're successful with it, when they complete something. The next thing is we need to show a lot of empathy right now. Virtual learning is difficult for everybody. It's difficult for our students. It's difficult for parents. It's very difficult for educators. So we need to give some grace all the way around. We need to understand that things are not going to be perfect during this time. Some days are going to go smoothly and some days are not. So if Tuesday was a disaster, everybody sit down, reset, let's try again on Wednesday and see if we can do a better job. But show a lot of empathy towards teachers, towards your children during this time. Secondly is you need to use supplemental resources. There are a lot of things out there right now that are available to our students to help them to do independent learning. There's some online classes that are free that you can access. There are educational games and videos that you can access, educational television that might supplement some of the things that our kids are learning in school. Again, audiobooks are available to our kids. You can even do virtual field trips and make it more enjoyable. So use all of those resources that you can.
Now, please don't roll your eyes at this next one. Right now, this may seem to be a big challenge, but I ask you to make it fun. It's rare for families to have this much time together between work and school. So this is a valuable period of time. This year is a year your kids will never forget. Not only the bad parts of it, but the times where you spend time together, which is so rare. So try to enjoy your teen. Don't try to capture this time, to moralize with your kids or teach them life lessons. Sometimes I see this where parents, when they get their kids alone, they just want to cram as many life lessons as they can. You don't have to do that. Just enjoy them, get to know them. They're actually people, your teens. And remember this is super important. Your relationship with your kid is much more important than how many assignments they complete. I saw a family not long ago where the kid said in the presence of his mother, she is more concerned about how much schoolwork I get done than she is about me. And the two adults in the room, she and I kind of stood there slack-jawed and thought that was very impactful. So your relationship with your kid is more important than what happens in school right now. Also, make sure, once again, that you ask for help. Don't hesitate to ask the expert when it comes to distance learning. The expert is your child's teacher. They know how to do this. They know what they're talking about. So email, ask for guidance, but also ask other parents as well. I know you know parents who are doing this well, and don't be prideful, be humble and say, how are you doing this with your kid? Help me learn how to do this. You might even want to consider dividing teaching responsibilities between parents. If you're a two-parent family and the husband's better at math, the wife's better at English, those are the subjects you're going to teach. Or if you have kids, older kids and younger kids, employ the older kids as tutors or educators themselves. Get the whole family involved, depending on who is good at teaching what. I also recommend taking regular recesses. Schools have recess for a reason. Make sure your child gets plenty of breaks from the screen. There's so much screen going on right now. So set alarms if you need to on your little smartphone to establish regular break times, just like they were in school, where they can get up and walk around like they used to in the hallways. Encourage them to go outside, encourage them to be active, and to eat nutritious snacks when necessary. We see that a lot of our teens are sinking to their lowest level of dietary standards and eating whatever is in the house. So these are all important considerations while we're doing this distance learning thing. We know that this has been just a very brief introduction to the challenges of adolescence in the pandemic era, but I really hope it's been helpful for you. Here are our email addresses if you'd like further information or you'd like to ask for help. So meanwhile, Mary and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the health fair. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.